video is not about the song, actually. I'm going to do another video about the song. It's fascinating what happened with the song that George Harrison wrote, My Sweet Lord, in which he put the Hare Krishna mantra. This is when he became a fully fledged Hare Krishna. I believe this song came out in 1970, but I think maybe he recorded it in 69 after the Beatles broke up, or maybe he recorded while the Beatles were still... No, I think he recorded after. But then there was a court case that was brought that claimed that he had plagiarized the song from a song from earlier in the 60s, like 63 or 64, called He's So Fine. I'll tell the whole story in another video. And he lost the court case, which is fascinating, right? And he got very upset about that. But for another time, I'm sure there's plenty of videos on YouTube about that if you're interested. What I really want to talk about, I know there's not a lot of videos about this, but this is, I think, even more fascinating. And I have done a video, but I want to do a correction on my previous video. So I did a video where I talked about when John Lennon, Yoko Ono, and George Harrison all met with Srila Prabhupada in London. I think they met at the Beatles studio. I'm not sure exactly where they met, but it's interesting that Ringo and Paul were not there. They weren't present. It was just George, John, and Yoko, apparently, and also Srila Prabhupada and some of his close disciples. Now, what I had originally said in my previous video was I didn't think George was saying much. I thought John and Yoko were saying a lot. But it turns out that when I read the transcript, because I didn't have the official transcript, and I believe I now have it, and I'm going to put the link to the transcript in the description. And actually, I can tell you that it says, room conversation with John Lennon, Yoko Ono, and George Harrison, September 11th, 1969, London, at Tittenhurst, wherever that is. And they ended up recording the whole meeting. Prabhupada starts by saying, would you like to record or not? And George actually was the one that was talking the most. And George was saying Hare Krishna. So he was already, at this point, he was already Hare Krishna. And you can see by the end of this meeting that even though George seems to be kind of with John and Yoko in his questioning, but it turns out when you read to the end, George is like, I believe in Krishna, right? I believe what you're saying. Whereas John and Yoko did not actually go for it. And you can see that in the songs that they came out with. You know, John came out with the song God after the Beatles broke up, in which he says, I don't believe in Krishna. I don't believe in, I think he says, I don't believe in yoga. I don't believe in mantra. I don't believe in Buddha. And George does My Sweet Lord, and some other songs which were definitely in the vein. And he also played together with this kirtan group. I'm forgetting the name right now. And he also did the Hare Krishna mantra. He put that out there. So it's interesting. And I think this meeting kind of shows that they were on divergent paths. And this might have been also a reason why the Beatles ended up breaking up, is because they were also going in different spiritual ways, moving in different spiritual circles, you might say, or definitely George is becoming a Hare Krishna. I don't know if John really could live with that. I don't think that Ringo and Paul were interested. Remember, they also left India. They were the first ones to leave India when the Beatles went to India to do that meditation retreat with Maharishi Mahesh Yogi. George and John were the last two to leave. And so it's a fascinating, I'm not going to go that deep into it. You can read it yourself. But part of the issue here is everyone seems to have be promoting their lineage and promoting their mantra? How do you know which lineage is really, are they all true, or some of these lineages bogus? How do you know what a true lineage is? Prabhupada keeps saying, what's the word in Sanskrit? Sampradaya, which means the lineage. And he keeps saying, well, we have this lineage that goes all the way back. And that's how you know that we're who we say we are, and why the Hare Krishna mantra is the best mantra, is the one that will really bring you to where you want to go. Now, what I was saying is, if you read the transcript, George throughout seems to be a little skeptical himself. And or at least he seems to be playing devil's advocate a little bit. John and Yoko seem to be, they seem to be polite, but they have a lot of questions. For example, let me see if I can. Prabhupada asks them, what kind of philosophy you are following, may I ask? And John Lennon says, following? And Yoko Ono says, we don't follow anything, we're just living. George Harrison says, we've done meditation, or I do my meditation, I have a mantra meditation. And that, I guess, he got from Maharishi. And then Prabhupada said, this is also mantra. And John Lennon said, it's not the song, though. And then George says, no, it's chanting, right? You chant this mantra, you don't sing it. We heard it. I think they're talking about the mantra they got from Maharishi, which you're not supposed to tell anyone what the mantra is, right? They give it to you personally, and you do not tell anyone what your mantra is. Whereas the Hare Krishna mantra is public knowledge. It's a secret. John Lennon says it's a secret mantra, right? Okay, you can read this because it's kind of long and in depth, and Prabhupada is really the one that's speaking the most. The Beatles actually do not speak that much, usually until they're asked a question or something. But Yoko Ono says, if Hare Krishna is such a strong, powerful mantra, is there any reason to chant anything else? For instance, you talked about songs and many different mantras. Is there any point in chanting other songs or mantra? And Prabhupada says, no, these mantras are also, but Hare Krishna, he doesn't finish that thought, but Hare Krishna mantra is especially recommended for this age. So the point is, he's saying, if the mantra is so great, this is Prabhupada, if the mantra is so great, why should it be kept secret? It should be public. But there is a reason to keep the mantra to yourself, because the idea is it has a certain power when you keep it. And, I think that's something that is said a lot in the world of yoga, is that you keep this to yourself. It has more power, and you grow in the power if you do not go blabbing things to everyone, like talking about your experiences, spiritual experiences, and so on, but you keep a lid on it. Whereas with Hare Krishnas, the idea is that you do this publicly, you chant, you sing publicly, you dance. George Harrison says, all people can get the mantras that we have, but it's just that they must get it from somebody else. We can't give it to them, but it is available for everybody. Yeah, so then George kind of is saying, well, these mantras that we got from Maharishi, they're also public. You don't give your mantra to someone else, but anyone can have the mantra who pays for it, right? And then John Lennon says, if all mantras just the name of God, whether it's a secret mantra or an open mantra, it's all the name of God, so it doesn't really make much difference. Does it which one you sing? Which I think is a great question. Right? Why would it matter? Right? And I think John was onto something right there. And then Prabhupada says, no, just like in a drug shop, they sell all medicine for disease, curing disease, but still you have to take the doctor's prescription to take a particular type of medicine. They will not supply you if you go to a drug shop and you say, I'm diseased. So, he's trying to make the point that the Hare Krishna mantra is prescribed for this age, right? For the dark age of materialism, which is the Kali Yuga, which is the age that we're in. The Hare Krishna mantra is the best mantra. Whereas John is saying, well, why does it even matter really? Aren't they really all different names of God? Which I still think is a great question, right? I'm not completely convinced by what Prabhupada is saying. I don't think John was either. Yoko Ono says, if the mantra itself has such power, does it matter where you receive it, where you take it? I think Yoko Ono is actually asking the most pointed questions here of all of them. And she's the most, I think, probing and maybe skeptical. So John gets into the question of how do you know who is a true master, right? Who is a true guru? Sampradaya is what Prabhupada says. Disciplic succession or lineage, right? Through the lineage, from the lineage. And then John says, comes back with a great response, which is, well, Maharishi said the exact same thing, right? His mantra goes all the way back to the Vedic times, and with as much authority. So how do you know, right? How do I know which one to follow? Maharishi says his goes back. You say yours goes back. And then George says, he says, surely isn't it like flowers? If somebody may prefer roses and somebody may like carnations better, isn't it really a matter for the devotee that one person may find Hare Krishna is more beneficial to his spiritual progress, and yet somebody else, some other mantra may be more beneficial? So George seems to be on John's side here, actually. Isn't it like just a matter of taste, like judging a flower? They're all flowers, but some people may like one better than the other. So this is interesting because George at this point is a Hare Krishna, and at the same time, he seems to be siding with John and Yoko in saying, well, I like Hare Krishna, but some other people might not like Hare Krishna. I'm into Krishna, but some other people may not like that. But I think the Hare Krishna, when you get down into the depth of it, it is kind of dogmatic, right? It becomes doctrinal and dogmatic, like most institutionalized religions. And I think George is maybe a little bit opposed to that. But that's a question I have that I'd like to explore more. Remember, I'm writing this book, so this is all part of, it's going to go into the book. But you're my guinea pigs if you're listening to this, to start to talk about these ideas. And then Prabhupada tries to say that, well, there are distinctions among flowers. Some flowers have flavor, some flowers don't have flower. And then Yoko's like, well, is the one that has flavor better than the one that doesn't have flavor? You can read this, then Prabhupada goes into a very long spiel. And then they go into this thing about the Bhagavad Gita, and how do you know which English translation? Do you have to know the Sanskrit to study the Bhagavad Gita? Maharishi also had a translation. He does have a translation of not the whole Gita, but the first 6 chapters of the Gita, and they bring that in. George and John are like, well, Maharishi also has his translation of the Bhagavad Gita. How do you know which translation? And I want to say that Prabhupada does not come off too bad himself in this. Like, he doesn't come off too dogmatic. But on the other hand, somewhat, he's following his lineage, which he believes is a true lineage. So, but the question is, and I think they have valid questions. And also, I want to say that this really shows that the Beatles were very intelligent people. They knew how to ask questions, and they were, none of them went to college, right? They went from high school to into playing in a band. They were already playing in a band, right? But they went straight into show business, and they knew how to, they weren't the Beatles for nothing, right? Okay, so a lot of it goes into that thing about the Bhagavad Gita and what's the best English translation, what's the most authoritative. It's actually quite a back and forth that they have. Like they're really pressing Prabhupada in this interview. So then I'll let you read the rest of it. I think it's time to end this video, but I just wanted to bring this up, and you can make of it what you will. I think that this was a very important meeting. I think this is a very seminal meeting in the world of religion, and because of the Beatles' influence, right, and because of the divergent ways that the Beatles went after that, and the fact that George became Hare Krishna was very influential on people in that era. Maybe not so much now, but that was a big thing, right? That was a very big thing. The fact that John and Yoko did not was also a big thing. And I think this is like something that more people should be talking about, especially if you want to get at, the deeper dimensions of the Beatles and what happened with the 60s, and what happened, what's happening in the world of spirituality, the world of religion. If you are on a spiritual journey and you have any path that you're on, particularly, this dialogue, this interview between Prabhupada, Yoko, John, and George, I think is fascinating and can potentially help you to make a little bit more sense of, what path you're on and what path you're following. And, in general, I think John was against institutionalized and anything. I think George probably was to some extent, but he still identified with the Hare Krishna movement, and he was a Hare Krishna the rest of his life. So with that said, I'm going to sign off, and I would love to hear your comments, your thoughts, and definitely, if you get a chance, read this transcript. It's very interesting. All right, thanks. Hari Om, Hari Bol.